The city of Knoxville, Tennessee, a place often associated with Southern charm and the echoes of country music, holds a dark secret. In January 2007, a horrific crime shattered the peace of this community, a crime that would expose a chilling underbelly and leave an indelible scar on the hearts of many. This is the story of Channon Christian and Christopher Newsom, two young lives tragically cut short in a brutal and senseless act. Channon Christian, a vibrant and promising 21-year-old, was a senior at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. Friends described her as warm, intelligent, and full of life. She had a bright future ahead of her, dreams of a career and a life filled with love and laughter. Her boyfriend, 23-year-old Christopher Newsom, known to his loved ones as Chris, was a hard worker with a kind heart. He and Channon shared a deep connection and were building a life together. Chris was known for his loyalty and his easygoing nature. On the evening of January 6, 2007, Channon and Chris were on their way to a friend's house. Little did they know, their path would intersect with a group of individuals who would inflict unimaginable cruelty upon them. The suspects in this heinous crime were a group of individuals with troubled backgrounds. Lamarcus Davidson, a 25-year-old with a prior criminal record, would become the central figure in this horrifying narrative. His brother, Latalvis Cobbins, then 24, was also implicated in the events that unfolded. Joining them was George Thomas, a 24-year-old with his own history of legal issues. And finally, Vanessa Coleman, an 18-year-old at the time, who would also be charged in connection with the crime. These four individuals, each with their own complexities and pasts, would become the perpetrators of a crime that shocked the nation and left a community demanding justice. Over the course of this video, we will delve into the details of that fateful night and the subsequent investigation, piecing together the tragic events that led to the murders of Channon Christian and Christopher Newsom. It was the late evening of January 6, 2007. Channon Christian and Christopher Newsom were leaving a friend's apartment at the Washington Ridge complex in North Knoxville. They were heading out for an evening that should have been filled with laughter and companionship. As they approached Channon's Toyota 4Runner, their lives took a horrifying turn. Several individuals, armed and intent on violence, approached the couple. Under the threat of firearms, Channon and Chris were forced into Channon's vehicle. Their hands were bound, their world shrinking to the confines of the back seat as they were driven away from the familiar streets of Knoxville. The 4Runner sped away, carrying them toward an unknown destination and a fate more terrible than they could have ever imagined. Their initial destination was 2316 Chipman Street, Lamarcus Davidson's rental home, about 3 miles from the apartment complex. Channon and Chris were taken to 2316 Chipman Street, a small, nondescript house that would become the epicenter of unimaginable horror. Inside, the four suspects, Lamarcus Davidson, Latalvis Cobbins, George Thomas, and Vanessa Coleman, held the couple captive. What unfolded inside those walls was a series of brutal and depraved acts. Chris and Channon were subjected to torture and sexual assault. Chris was eventually taken from the house. He was forced to walk barefoot to a desolate area near railroad tracks. There, he was murdered. His body was then set on fire. Channon remained captive in the house, enduring hours of horrific abuse. She was eventually killed and her body was hidden within the house. The nightmare began to unravel on January 7, 2007, when Channon Christian's abandoned Toyota 4Runner was discovered several miles from the Chipman Street house. The discovery of the vehicle raised immediate alarm and initiated a full-scale missing persons investigation. The following day, January 8, the Knoxville Police Department received a crucial tip that led them to the Chipman Street residence. It was there, inside the dilapidated house, that they made the gruesome discovery of Channon Christian's body. The scene inside was horrific, painting a picture of unimaginable violence and cruelty. Investigators immediately recognized the severity of the crime and launched a homicide investigation. Later that same day, the search for Christopher Newsom led authorities to a desolate area near railroad tracks off Cherry Street, where his burned and lifeless body was found. The discovery of both bodies sent shockwaves through Knoxville. The brutality of the crimes was unprecedented, and the community reeled from the horrific news. The pressure on law enforcement to find the perpetrators and bring them to justice was immense. As investigators processed the crime scenes at Chipman Street and the railroad tracks, they began to uncover crucial evidence. The discovery of Channon's vehicle provided initial leads, and forensic analysis of both locations started to paint a grim picture of the events that had transpired. Witnesses and emerging information began to point towards the residence of 2316 Chipman Street. Lamarcus Davidson, with his prior criminal history, quickly became a person of interest. His brother, Latalvis Cobbins, and George Thomas were also soon implicated. The involvement of Vanessa Coleman came to light through further investigation and witness testimonies. Her presence at the Chipman Street residence during the time of the crimes placed her firmly within the unfolding horror. The arrests brought a sense of relief to the terrified community, but the details emerging from the investigation revealed the true extent of the brutality inflicted upon Channon and Chris, leaving many struggling to comprehend such senseless violence. Following their arrests, Lamarcus Davidson, Latalvis Cobbins, George Thomas, and Vanessa Coleman faced a community demanding justice. The wheels of the legal system began to turn as the state of Tennessee prepared to prosecute those responsible for the heinous murders of Channon Christian and Christopher Newsom. Initially, all four were charged with numerous offenses, including first-degree murder, kidnapping, rape, and aggravated robbery. The sheer volume and severity of the charges reflected the brutality of the crimes and the multiple layers of violence inflicted upon the victims. The legal proceedings that followed were complex and emotionally charged. The prosecution meticulously began to build their case, piecing together forensic evidence, witness testimonies, and the accounts of the accused. The defense teams for each of the accused began to formulate their strategies, setting the stage for a series of trials that would grip the attention of the nation and expose the disturbing details of the crime. The pursuit of justice for Channon Christian and Christopher Newsom had begun, a long and arduous process that would involve multiple trials and intense scrutiny. The first of the trials to commence was that of Lamarcus Davidson, considered by many to be the central figure in the crimes. The prosecution presented a substantial amount of evidence, including forensic findings from the Chipman Street house, testimony from cooperating witnesses, and details of Davidson's prior criminal history. The trial was marked by intense emotional testimony and the recounting of the horrific ordeal endured by Channon and Chris. The defense attempted to cast doubt on the evidence and portray Davidson as less culpable. After deliberation, the jury found Lamarcus Davidson guilty on all counts, including 2 counts of first-degree murder, aggravated kidnapping, rape, and aggravated robbery. He was subsequently sentenced to death for the murders of Channon Christian and Christopher Newsom, a sentence that brought a measure of closure to some, but did little to ease the pain of their loss. Next to face trial was Latalvis Cobbins, Lamarcus Davidson's brother. While Cobbins was not present for the entirety of the crimes, the prosecution argued that he was instrumental in the kidnapping and played a significant role in the events that led to the deaths of Channon and Chris. Cobbins' defense argued that his involvement was less direct and that he was influenced by his brother. However, the prosecution presented evidence linking him to the planning and execution of the crimes. The jury found Latalvis Cobbins guilty on several counts, including felony murder, murder committed during the commission of another felony, such as kidnapping and robbery, kidnapping, rape, and robbery. He was not convicted of first-degree murder. Cobbins was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The trial of George Thomas followed. Similar to Cobbins, the prosecution contended that Thomas played a crucial role in the abduction and the subsequent crimes committed at the Chipman Street house. The defense for Thomas argued a lesser degree of involvement and attempted to distance him from the most violent acts. However, the prosecution presented evidence placing him at the scene and implicating him in the kidnapping and assaults. George Thomas was also found guilty of felony murder, kidnapping, rape, and robbery. He was not convicted of first-degree premeditated murder. Thomas received a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. The trial of Vanessa Coleman was perhaps the most complex and generated significant debate. Coleman was younger than the other defendants, and her level of direct participation in the most violent acts was a key point of contention. The prosecution argued that Coleman was present during much of the ordeal, failed to intervene, and was complicit in the crimes. The defense portrayed her as being under the influence and duress of the other, older defendants. The jury found Vanessa Coleman guilty on lesser charges than the others, including facilitation of especially aggravated kidnapping and facilitation of aggravated rape. She was not convicted of murder. Coleman received a prison sentence of 35 years. This verdict sparked considerable controversy, with some believing it was too lenient given the horrific nature of the crimes. The murders of Channon Christian and Christopher Newsom serve as a stark reminder of the darkness that can exist within humanity. Their story is a testament to the fragility of life and the profound impact of violence on individuals, families, and entire communities. While justice has been served in the eyes of the law, the emotional scars left by this case run deep and will likely endure for generations. It is our collective responsibility to remember Channon and Chris, to honor their memory by striving for a world where such senseless acts of violence are no longer a reality. May Channon, Christian and Christopher Newsom rest in peace.